My wife mocked me as a 2 minutes joke at dinner, so I exposed months of humiliation, reclaimed my dignity, filed for divorce, and walked away forever. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. "He can't last 2 minutes," she announced to our dinner table, her voice cutting through the gentle conversation like a knife through silk. The laughter that followed wasn't the uncomfortable kind you'd expect. It was the cruel, knowing laughter of people who had just witnessed someone get completely destroyed. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, watching my wife of 6 years deliver the most humiliating blow I'd ever received, and she did it with a smile. Not the embarrassed smile of someone who'd made a mistake, but the satisfied smile of someone who just landed exactly the punch they'd been aiming for. The silence that followed was deafening. Our closest friends, the couples we'd known for years, suddenly found their wine glasses fascinating. The expensive steaks on our plates might as well have been cardboard. Everyone knew what had just happened, and nobody knew where to look. "I mean, seriously," she continued, clearly enjoying the attention. "Sometimes I wonder if I should just time him with a stopwatch." Another wave of uncomfortable laughter rippled around the table. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. This was a public execution, and she was the executioner. I placed my fork down carefully, my hands steady despite the rage building inside me. Years of marriage had taught me to read her moods, her intentions, her games. This wasn't about her being drunk or careless with her words. This was calculated. This was her way of asserting dominance, of putting me in my place in front of people whose opinions mattered to both of us. The thing about humiliation is that it reveals character, not just in the person delivering it, but in everyone witnessing it. I watched as our friends squirmed in their seats, some trying to change the subject, others pretending they hadn't heard. But I also saw the ones who seemed to enjoy the show, the ones who leaned in slightly, waiting for my reaction. "Honey," I said quietly, my voice carrying just enough edge to cut through her performance. "You might want to save some energy for later. You're going to need it." The table went completely silent. She looked at me with surprise, maybe even a little fear. She'd expected me to shrink, to apologize, to play the wounded husband. Instead, I'd just fired a warning shot. But I wasn't done. "Besides," I continued, taking a sip of my wine, "quality over quantity has always been my philosophy. Some people need hours to accomplish what others can do in minutes." I looked directly at her, my smile as cold as a winter morning. Efficiency is a skill not everyone appreciates. The power dynamic had shifted. Our friends were now looking between us like spectators at a tennis match. She'd started this game, but I'd just shown her I knew how to play it too. The difference was I played to win, not just to wound. For the rest of the evening, I was the perfect gentleman. I engaged in conversation, refilled glasses, even helped clear the table. But inside, something had fundamentally changed. The woman sitting across from me, laughing and chatting as if nothing had happened, had just shown me exactly who she really was, and more importantly, what she thought of me. The drive home was silent. She stared out the window while I focused on the road, my mind already working through what had just happened. This wasn't about one bad night or too much wine. This was about respect, about boundaries, about the fact that the woman I'd married had just tried to destroy me in front of people we both cared about. When we got home, she went straight to bed without a word. I stayed downstairs, sitting in my chair, replaying the evening in my head, every word, every look, every reaction. I'd been married long enough to know that tonight wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A line had been crossed, and there was no going back. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight as I sat there, understanding with crystal clarity that my wife had just declared war on my dignity. What she didn't know was that she'd picked a fight with the wrong man. I'd spent years accommodating her moods, her demands, her need to be the center of attention. But humiliating me in public, that was a mistake she was going to regret. I finished my drink and headed upstairs, my mind already formulating a plan. She wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that some games have consequences she never saw coming. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Coffee, toast, the usual morning routine. She even hummed while getting ready for work, as if she hadn't just nuked our marriage the night before. I watched her from across the kitchen table, studying her like I was seeing her for the first time. "Sleep well?" I asked, my tone neutral, almost pleasant. She looked up from her phone, surprised by the question. "Fine," she said, then went back to scrolling. No apology, no acknowledgement, no remorse, just business as usual. That told me everything I needed to know about what I was dealing with. I spent the day at work thinking about the dinner party, but not in the way she probably expected. I wasn't wallowing in embarrassment or planning some dramatic confrontation. I was analyzing, dissecting, understanding the chessboard she'd just revealed to me. The text messages started coming in around lunch. First from David, one of the guys who'd been at dinner. "Hey man, that was awkward last night, you okay?" Then from his wife, "I'm so sorry about what happened. That was completely out of line." But the most revealing message came from someone I hadn't expected. Rachel, my wife's best friend, texted me directly, "I need to talk to you. What she did last night was wrong, and it's not the first time she's said things like that about you." That sentence hit me like a brick. It wasn't the first time. She'd been doing this behind my back, using our private life as entertainment for her friends. The dinner party wasn't a moment of poor judgment. It was her getting comfortable enough to do it in front of me. I called Rachel during my lunch break. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. "Months," she admitted. "Maybe longer. She talks about you like you're some kind of joke, your performance, your habits, even the way you dress. I've told her to stop, but she just laughs it off." The pieces were falling into place, the way she'd been talking to me lately, the subtle digs, the eye rolls when I spoke. I'd attributed it to stress, to the normal ups and downs of marriage, but it was bigger than that. She'd been systematically undermining me, and last night was just her going public with it. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you deserve better," Rachel said simply, "and because I'm tired of watching her destroy a good man for her own amusement." I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. This wasn't just about fixing a marriage anymore. This was about salvaging whatever was left of my self-respect and deciding whether there was anything worth saving. When I got home that evening, she was in the kitchen making dinner, acting perfectly normal. "How was your day?" she asked, not looking up from the stove. "Enlightening," I said, sitting down at the counter. "I heard from some interesting people today." She glanced at me, and I caught a flicker of something in her eyes, uncertainty, maybe fear. "Oh, Rachel called me," I said, watching her reaction carefully. "We had a very informative conversation about your recent dinner party commentary." The color drained from her face. She turned back to the stove, her movements suddenly jerky and nervous. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do," I said calmly. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" She spun around and I saw the defensive walls going up. "Look, if you can't handle a little joke between friends, maybe that's your problem, not mine." There it was. The deflection, the blame shifting, the complete refusal to take responsibility. I'd been married to this woman for 6 years, and I was just now seeing who she really was underneath all the charm and smiles. "A joke," I repeated slowly. "Is that what you call humiliating your husband in public? Making him the punchline of your entertainment?" "You're being dramatic," she said, but her voice wavered slightly. "Everyone knows I was just being silly. Everyone knows you were being cruel," I corrected. "There's a difference." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to think very carefully about whether you want to be married to someone you respect, or whether you want to be married to someone you can use as your personal comedy material. Because you can't have both." The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of something burning on the stove. She turned to deal with it, her hands shaking slightly. When she faced me again, there was something different in her expression. Not remorse, but calculation. "Are you threatening me?" she asked. "I'm clarifying the situation," I said, standing up. "You crossed a line last night, a big one. And if you think I'm going to pretend it didn't happen, you're mistaken." I walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and next time you want to discuss our private life with your friends, maybe run it by me first. I'd hate for you to accidentally say something you might regret." As I left the kitchen, I heard her call after me, but I didn't turn around. The game had changed, and she was just beginning to realize it. For years, I'd been the accommodating husband, the one who kept the peace, who absorbed her moods and criticisms without pushing back. That version of me had died last night at the dinner table. The man she was dealing with now was someone entirely different, someone who understood that respect isn't given freely, it is earned and maintained. And if she couldn't give it, she was about to learn what life looked like without it. The next few days were a master class in observation. I became a student of my own marriage, watching patterns I'd been blind to for months. It was like putting on glasses for the first time and realizing how blurry everything had been. She left her phone on the counter while showering, something she'd never done before. I didn't touch it, but I noticed. She made calls from the garage, thinking I couldn't hear. "I heard enough. He's been acting weird since the dinner party," she told someone. "Like he's actually upset about a stupid joke." A stupid joke. That's how she was framing it to everyone, not as a betrayal, not as humiliation, but as her husband being overly sensitive about harmless fun. The narrative was already being written, and guess who was the villain in her version? I started paying attention to how she spoke to me in public versus private. At the grocery store, she was sweet and affectionate. At home, she was dismissive and cold. It was like watching an actress switch between roles, and I was just now realizing how long the performance had been going on. The breaking point came 3 days later. I was working late when I got a text from my brother-in-law. "Hey, heard about the dinner party situation. My wife says she's been talking about you like this for a while. Thought you should know." I called him immediately. "What exactly has she been saying?" "Man, I don't want to get in the middle of this," he said, discomfort clear in his voice. "But she's been pretty vocal about your shortcomings in multiple areas." "Multiple areas," I repeated. "Such as?" "Look, she makes you sound like you're some kind of failure, in bed, around the house, financially. She even joked about how you cried during movies. It's been going on for months." The picture was getting clearer, and it was uglier than I'd imagined. She hadn't just humiliated me at one dinner party. She'd been systematically destroying my reputation for months, piece by piece, conversation by conversation. I thanked him and sat in my car for a long time, processing what I'd learned. This wasn't about one bad night or too much wine. This was about a woman who had lost all respect for her husband and had decided to make that everyone else's problem too. When I got home, she was on the couch watching TV, acting perfectly normal. "How was work?" she asked without looking up. "Productive," I said, sitting down across from her. "I learned some interesting things today." She glanced at me, and I saw that familiar flicker of concern. "Oh, your brother called me," I said simply. "We had a very enlightening conversation about your recent commentary on our marriage." She muted the TV, her full attention on me now. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The question is, how long did you think you could get away with it?" She stood up, crossing her arms defensively. "I don't know what lies he's been telling you, but—" "Lies?" I interrupted. "So when you told your sister that I cried during movies, that was a lie? When you told your friends that I'm useless around the house, that was a lie? When you discussed our finances like I'm some kind of deadbeat, that was a lie?" Her face went pale. She hadn't expected me to have specifics. "People exaggerate things," she said weakly. "People," I repeated. "You mean you. You exaggerate things. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you actually believe what you're saying about me." "You're twisting everything," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I was just venting to friends. Everyone does that." "Venting?" I said, standing up. "Is that what you call character assassination? Because that's what this is. You've been systematically destroying my reputation for months, and the dinner party was just you getting comfortable enough to do it in front of me." She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't finished. "Here's what I find most interesting about all of this. You've been telling everyone how terrible I am, how unsatisfying our marriage is, how much you have to put up with, but you're still here, still married to this supposedly pathetic man." I walked closer, my voice getting quieter but more intense, which makes me wonder, what exactly are you getting out of this arrangement? Because it's clearly not love, respect, or even basic human decency. She backed away from me, hitting the wall. "You're scaring me," she said. "I'm not the one you should be scared of," I said calmly. "You should be scared of the consequences of your actions. You should be scared of what happens when a man realizes his wife has been using him as entertainment for her friends." I turned and walked toward the stairs, then paused. "Oh, and just so we're clear, I'm not the pathetic one in this marriage. The pathetic one is the person who stays married to someone they claim to despise just so they have material for their comedy routine." As I headed upstairs, I heard her calling after me, but I didn't respond. The investigation was complete. I had all the information I needed to make an informed decision about my future, and that decision was becoming clearer by the hour. The woman I'd married was gone, if she had ever truly existed. What remained was someone who saw me as a source of amusement and financial stability, nothing more. Someone who had so little respect for me that she turned our private life into public entertainment. But she'd made one critical error in her calculations. She'd assumed I was too weak, too accommodating, too desperate to keep the peace to do anything about it. She was about to find out how wrong she was. Saturday morning. She was making breakfast, humming again, acting like the last few days of tension didn't exist. I watched her from the doorway, coffee in hand, studying this woman who had become a stranger to me. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cutting through her cheerful morning routine. She looked up from the eggs she was scrambling, and something in my tone made her smile falter. About what? About the fact that our marriage is over. The spatula clattered to the floor. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. What are you talking about? Sit down, I said, pulling out a chair at the kitchen table. We're going to have a conversation about respect, consequences, and what happens when someone mistakes patience for weakness. She didn't move. You're being ridiculous. One dinner party comment and you're talking about divorce? One comment? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let's talk about all the comments, the months of them, the systematic destruction of my reputation among our friends and family. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. I've been busy this week, talking to people, learning things. Would you like to hear what I've discovered? Her face went white. You've been talking to people about our marriage just like you have, I said evenly. Except I was gathering facts, not spreading lies. She sat down heavily, her hands shaking slightly. What do you want from me? I want you to understand the situation you've created, I said, leaning forward. You've spent months telling everyone who would listen that I'm a failure as a husband, that I can't satisfy you, that I'm useless around the house, that I cry during movies like some kind of child. People exaggerate. Stop. My voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Don't you dare try to minimize this. You turned our private life into entertainment. You made me the punchline of your jokes. You destroyed my reputation piece by piece because you thought it was funny. She tried to interrupt, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. You did all of this while living in my house, eating food I paid for, wearing clothes I bought, driving a car I financed. You used me as your personal ATM while telling everyone I was worthless. That's not... It's exactly what you did, I said. And the most pathetic part? You thought I was too weak to do anything about it. You thought I'd just sit there and take it because I was desperate to keep the peace. She was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of panic. We can fix this, she said. We can go to counseling. We can work it out. Work it out? I stood up, looking down at her. You want to work out the fact that you have zero respect for me? You want to work out the fact that you've been assassinating my character for months? I didn't mean... You meant every word, I said. And now you're going to live with the consequences. She jumped up, grabbing my arm. You can't just end 6 years of marriage over this. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. Watch me. She let go as if I'd burned her. What do you want? What will it take to fix this? There is no fixing this, I said. You can't unsay what you've said. You can't undo what you've done. You showed me exactly who you are, and I believe you. But I love you, she said desperately. I said, my voice deadly quiet. You love the lifestyle I provide. You love having someone to ridicule and control. You love having an audience for your comedy routine. But you don't love me. I walked to the counter and picked up the papers I'd prepared. These are divorce papers. I'm filing on Monday. She stared at the documents like they were a snake. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life, I said. You wanted to know if I could last more than 2 minutes? Well, congratulations. You're about to find out what the rest of your life looks like without me. She tried to grab the papers, but I pulled them back. You'll get your own copies when my lawyer serves you. This is insane, she said, her voice rising. You're destroying our marriage over a stupid joke. I'm not destroying anything, I said calmly. You already did that. I'm just making it official. She collapsed back into her chair, the reality finally hitting her. Where will I go? What will I do? That's not my problem anymore, I said. You should have thought about that before you decided to make me your entertainment. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. All those friends you've been entertaining with stories about what a failure I am, they're going to find out very soon what kind of person you really are. Because a woman who would humiliate her husband for fun is capable of anything. As I left the kitchen, I heard her calling after me, but her words were meaningless now. The conversation was over, the marriage was over, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. She wanted to play games with my dignity. She wanted to make me the joke. But the joke was on her, because the man she'd been married to, the one who absorbed her abuse and kept the peace, was gone, and the man who remained wasn't interested in being anyone's punchline ever again. Monday morning, the papers were filed. By noon, she was served at her office. I know because she called me 17 times in the first hour, each voicemail more desperate than the last. "You can't do this to me," she said in message number 12. "I have nowhere to go. I can't afford to live on my own." Funny how quickly the confident woman who'd been humiliating me became helpless when faced with consequences. But I wasn't answering her calls. I was busy taking control of my life. First stop, the bank. Our joint accounts were frozen pending the divorce proceedings. She'd been spending money like water, thinking I'd always be there to refill the well. That tap had just been turned off. Second stop, my lawyer's office. "I want a clean break," I told him. "No alimony, no support payments. She's a grown woman with a job. She can figure it out." He looked at the evidence I'd compiled, the text messages, the witness statements, the pattern of emotional abuse. "This is pretty damning stuff," he said. "With this documentation, we can argue for a fault-based divorce." "Perfect," I said. "I want her to understand that actions have consequences." By Wednesday, she was camping out at my office building, waiting for me to come out. "Please," she said when she saw me. "We need to talk." "We talked on Saturday," I said, walking past her. "The conversation is over." "I'll change," she called after me. "I'll be different. I'll respect you." I stopped and turned around. "You don't get to decide that now. You had 6 years to respect me. You chose not to." "I was stupid," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was angry about other things and I took it out on you." "Other things?" I asked. "What other things?" She couldn't answer because there were no other things. She had humiliated me because she enjoyed it. Simple as that. By Friday, she was trying a different approach. She showed up at my brother's house, where I was staying temporarily. "I told everyone I was lying," she said. "I told them you were amazing and I was just being cruel." "Too little, too late," I said. "You don't get to damage someone's reputation and then just take it back when it's convenient." She tried to push past me into the house, but I blocked her path. "You need to leave now." "This is my life too," she said. "You can't just erase me." "Watch me," I said, closing the door. The next week she tried emotional manipulation. "I'm going to hurt myself," she texted. "I can't live without you." I forwarded the message to her sister and called for a welfare check. If she was genuinely suicidal, she needed professional help. If she was lying, she needed to understand that I wouldn't be manipulated. 2 weeks later, she was begging mutual friends to intervene. "He's being unreasonable," she told them. "It was just a joke." But word travels fast in a small social circle. People started putting the pieces together, the months of complaints about me, the dinner party humiliation, the pattern of disrespect. Our friends began to see what I'd been living with. "I had no idea she was treating you like that," David told me. "I thought you guys were happy." "So did I said, until I realized I was the only one trying to make it work." By the end of the month, she was living with her parents, trying to figure out how to pay for her own car insurance. The woman who'd been so confident about tearing me down was discovering what life looked like without my support. But I wasn't celebrating. I was building new routines, new goals, new standards for how I expected to be treated. The man who'd accepted her abuse was gone. The man who remained demanded respect and wouldn't settle for anything less. She wanted to know if I could last more than 2 minutes. Well, she got her answer. I'd lasted exactly as long as it took to pack my dignity and walk away. 6 months later, I was a different man, not because I'd changed who I was, but because I'd stopped pretending to be someone I wasn't. The man who tolerated disrespect was gone. What remained was someone who knew his worth and refused to accept anything less. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday. Clean break. No alimony, no ongoing obligations. She tried every trick in the book, but the evidence was overwhelming. Even her own lawyer had advised her to take the settlement and move on. I was having lunch with David when she walked into the restaurant. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment neither of us moved. Then she looked away first, her confidence shattered. "That's awkward," David said, following my gaze. "Not for me," I said, continuing to eat. "I'm exactly where I want to be." She looked different, older somehow. The stress of the last 6 months had aged her while I'd been thriving. Funny how respecting yourself tends to have that effect. "I heard she's been struggling," David said quietly. "Living with her parents, having trouble making ends meet." "She's an adult with a job," I said. "She'll figure it out." "Don't you feel bad for her?" I considered the question. I feel bad that she chose to be the kind of person who would humiliate someone she claimed to love. I feel bad that she valued her entertainment more than her marriage. But do I feel responsible for her situation? Not even a little. A month later, I ran into Rachel at the grocery store. "I wanted to thank you," she said. For what? For showing me what self-respect looks like. I've been watching how you handled everything, and it made me realize I've been accepting things in my own relationship that I shouldn't. That conversation stayed with me. I thought the whole situation was about my marriage, but it was bigger than that. It was about standards, about what we accept from people, about the difference between being patient and being a doormat. The best part wasn't the divorce itself. It was the man I'd become because of it. I'd learned to set boundaries, to demand respect, to walk away when those boundaries were crossed. I'd stopped being afraid of being alone because I'd realized that being alone was infinitely better than being with someone who didn't value me. 3 months after the divorce, I was promoted at work. My confidence had returned, my focus had sharpened, and people noticed. The energy I'd been wasting on managing her moods and absorbing her criticisms was now available for productive things. I started dating again, but with completely different standards. The first time someone tried to test my boundaries, I walked away immediately, no second chances, no benefit of the doubt. I'd learned that people show you who they are right from the beginning, and it's your job to believe them. Last week I got a text from an unknown number. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive me someday. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Not because I was angry, but because I was done. That chapter of my life was closed, and I had no interest in reopening it. The woman who tried to make me a joke had become one herself. Our mutual friends had watched her behavior during the divorce, seen her desperation, witnessed her attempts at manipulation. She destroyed her own reputation more effectively than I ever could have. But the real victory wasn't her downfall, it was my rise. I'd gone from being someone who accepted disrespect to someone who commanded respect. From someone who feared being alone to someone who enjoyed his own company. From someone who begged for scraps of affection to someone who demanded genuine love. She'd asked if I could last more than 2 minutes. Turns out I could last a lifetime. The question was whether she deserved even 2 seconds of it. And I'd answered that question definitively,